All right, week one is officially in the books. From the good and the bad to the straight up ugly, we're breaking down everything from the Raiders-Chargers game. Don't go anywhere because Sin City Beat starts right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us on Sin City Beat. I'm Mike Davis, excited to have you all with us. Now, Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters leading the charge. On today's show, we're recapping the Raiders' Week 1 loss to the Chargers. Joining the action today, we got Ray Brewer, managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun, our very own sports reporter Mariah Janos with Fox 5 Las Vegas, and you know him, you love him, we have Willie G. Ramirez of WGRamirez.com. Great to have you guys hanging out with us. So let's dive right into a game that featured Jim Harbaugh's LA debut, the start of the Minshew quarterback era, and an intense player scuffle. There's certainly a lot to break down on this show. The first half, though, the Raiders D dominated, holding the Chargers to 6 points, but the feeling of dominance quickly soured and the bad vibes kicked in right before halftime when Gardner Minshew managed to cough up a backwards fumble pass situation. I don't even know what that was, frankly, which led to a field goal for the LA Chargers and changed the momentum of the game, frankly. Now, the second half wasn't much better. J.K. Dobbins ran all over the Raiders, and the offense could never get going. That all brings us to the key moment of the game when Antonio Pierce elected to punt, trailing 16-10 on a crucial 4th and 1 late in the fourth quarter. He told fans everything we already knew. He trusts the defense more than he actually trusts the offense. But to win in today's NFL, you need to score points. Sometimes you do need to trust that offense. 22-10 was the final score. Willie G. Ramirez, what's your take on Pierce's decision to punt on that critical 4th and 1?
Well, it's a decision that's based on a lot of factors, I think. I mean, it comes right down to it at the end, and you have to look at what took place earlier in the game. And one of the things is that earlier in the game, he went for it on 4th and 1. Now you're up against it, you're trailing in the game, and you need points. You don't need to be defending on your defense. At that moment, you have to get into the end zone. You have to get field goal. You have to draw closer. And I think because he went for it earlier, the question mark is there, yes, why didn't you go for it? You can't put yourself in that position either. There are a number of different things that team could have been doing differently. Time of possession is a big thing for me. This team averaged 2:26. That was right in the middle or toward the lower tier. The average was 1:48 to 4 minutes throughout the league. 1:48 per possession. The highest team having 4 minutes per possession. The Raiders only 2 minutes and 26 seconds. You got to sustain drives and let both units do what they do. Then maybe you're not in that situation to have to make that decision.
100%. And here's something that I want to really dive into here, because I think this is something I was queuing in on is, listen, Antonio Pierce has become a fixture and a face of this franchise. You go to preseason games, you go to the games, stadiums, commercials, everything is about this big bad boy, rough and tough vibe that Antonio Pierce is putting out there. It wasn't supposed to be shy, reserved, I don't really know what to do, I don't have conviction in my game day elections and choices. So for him to be kind of reserved on that and to not push when they should have in a circumstance like that, he's not being true to himself. What do you think about that, Ray? Is that a troubling issue?
You know, I think with Pierce, we have a one-game sample size, and I understand the fact that he did make a coaching blunder, right? I think they looked at like the past 40 years or whatever, people that were in that position, they all went for it, and he was like the sole person that punted. And it does look bad, but it's one game. And I think we're really, really overreacting. What we love about Pierce when we talked a week ago was that this guy's got this great personality and the players rally around him, and they are like him and they perform like him. So I'm going to assume this week in Baltimore, they're going to go out and play inspired. They're going to have their coaches back. And I think ownership said, hey, we're going to learn with this guy. We trust him for all the great he brings. And listen, it's one game after all.
We don't want to overreact, but, listen, that's partially what we do here. We have to overreact a little bit. Mariah, are we overreacting when you think about the sample size of 1 week, the bad punt situation, no call, plus the Gardner Minshew mishap? I mean, what are you queuing in on?
Well, I mean, I understand his reservations going down the stretch, but if there's any time to be aggressive, it is then in the fourth quarter when you are down just one score, because he chose not to, and we saw what happened on the ensuing drive. Chargers went down the field, put the game out of reach. To go back to what Ray's saying, yes, it's just one game, small sample size. I think what is going to be telling is going forward, will that aggression in play calling get kicked up a notch? If it continues to be more reserved, more let's sit back, not take the chance, that's when there's going to be more of an issue here. But again, game one of the season, okay, he did that. He made a call that hasn't been done since 2016.
Yeah.
We'll see going forward. Does he make the adjustments? Does he get more aggressive? Does he show that he trusts his offense enough to get it done?
It makes a lot of sense. I feel like I need Ray Brewer in my life 24/7 just to take me off edge, you know, talk me. I'm getting a little too crazy. So Ray, we're going to talk about, we'll come up with an hourly rate, you know, for you to just be with me all the time. All right, guys. Well, it all wasn't so bad. I mean, on that offensive side of the ball, rookie first-round pick, the stud tight end from Georgia, Brock Bowers, my man. He looked super good, and he actually led the team in targets. Coming up next, we're focusing on the offensive side of the football.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, we all know defense was going to be the identity for this Raiders football team, but 10 points just isn't enough to grab a win in today's NFL, and probably in any NFL, frankly. So what happened? Well, the O-line didn't look so good, which in turn hurt Zamir White and the run game. Ray Brewer, what do you think about offensive coordinator Luke Getsy's debut? Because it didn't look so hot from my perspective.
Yeah, so I think the one obvious glaring mistake with the play calling was your best player is Davante Adams.
Right.
He's a Hall of Famer. He still has plenty of tread left in the tires. And you felt like the guy was just running down the field by himself, and he never got the ball. And I think that they needed at halftime to get him more involved, to get plays directly to him so your best player could catch the ball. The Chargers did a great job of eliminating him. Brock Bowers, everything the Raiders thought he would be.
Yes.
Could you imagine if you had two legit threats in Adams and Bowers running on the field?
Well, that's the disappointing thing, because we actually have a lot of nice weapons. Myers looked, is a very nice player. Trey Tucker had some big catches. So yes, when you have two playmakers like Davante Adams and Brock Bowers, you want to get them the ball. And I'm one of those old school guys. You want to grease the path a little bit. Start off the game targeting Davante 2 or 3 times and just get him into a groove. But running the ball was a major issue. And Zamir White coming into that role with Josh Jacobs now in Green Bay, it didn't look great. Willie, what can we do on this offensive side of the ball to just get some positive momentum? Because 10 points, brother, is not a good situation.
Yeah, and if you're watching the game, there was one point during the broadcast where Zamir White had a good run. They even mentioned this is what happens when you get the running game going, the defense collapses, it opens things up for Davante Adams. A couple of numbers for you. They're tied for worst after week 1. Percentage of drives ending in an offensive score, 15.4%. One of 4 teams that average less than 1 point per drive.
Wow.
I'm going to give you a name, an X factor in the locker room, Amir Abdullah. This is a guy who's been around. He's got a very strong personality. We've been in the locker room at the practice facility. If you ever watched him, his demeanor over the years, I think this is a guy that can take Zamir White under his wing and remind him, dude, you were part of a national championship team. You ran with a deliberate nature when you won a national championship at Georgia. You need to do that here. I didn't see, and I get it, the offensive line has to do a better job. We need to see the holes opening up. Yeah. But when you're RB1, you're counted on to find holes, create things, power your way through. I didn't see a deliberate nature, a violent and aggressive nature that you kind of have to run with, especially when you're wearing the Raider logo.
Hey, I love it. And also, let's go back to this. Antonio Pierce, the identity of this team was going to be punch you in the mouth football, defense, run the ball, and we didn't get that done. So let me just understand this, because I'm an intangibles guy. That was my youth athletics. I was Mr. Intangibles,
Of course.
You're not highly selected in the backyard playground, but there are some side benefits, mostly dating once you become an older human being. But real quickly, so you're saying Amir Abdullah in the locker room, you like that in terms of how he's just going to a presence and kind of get Zamir mentally to get over that hurdle.
In a sense, because if you watched him in the game and the few runs that he had, and you watch the way he runs with a purpose because he knows he's going in there to sort of serve a role, right? He's going in there to get those extra yards, to give Zamir whatever it is, but when you watch his demeanor, he runs with confidence.
Yeah.
I kind of felt as if Zamir was a little hesitant at times.
Yes.
He's a little apprehensive. He's approaching the line of scrimmage,
100%.
thinking about it. Run with power. Run with a deliberate nature, the same way you did, again, as a national championship in the SEC.
Your given name is Zamir. That's swagger on a birth certificate.
They call him Zeus,
right there.
don't they?
Of course. All right, Mariah, tell us, I mean, when you're thinking offensive side of the ball, what do you want to tackle? What was standing out to you
The
from
offensive
week 1?
line. I think that's where it all starts. You want to get the run game going. Well, let's create some openings. Let's make some blocks to make it possible to get more than 3.2 yards a carry, whatever it was in that game. But I'm looking at their two most veteran and best players on the O-line. Colton Miller, Andre James, both of them giving up tackles and allowing Gardner Minshew to kind of just fail in the pocket at times. But for me, if your two best guys on the O-line are not performing, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of it. And you're not really going to get anywhere. And again, Zamir White is not Josh Jacobs. We've just discussed that. He does need to take a little bit more charge, but I think it all starts with that offensive line and creating some openings for him to get going and maybe build up more confidence to take off and go on those angry
100%.
runs.
I mean, and looking at this game, I mean, listen, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, two tough guys to handle on the edge, but there's something about Khalil Mack when he plays his old Raiders team. He lives for it. He always shows up. So, all right. Well, not great stuff there, but we're gonna have to see how week 2 progresses. Now, anyway, we're gonna turn to the other side of the football. Did the defense actually live up to the hype? The panel is gonna break it down next. Well, most of us figured that the Raiders' offense would experience its fair share of struggles this season, but defense kind of has always been the calling card for this team, especially under Antonio Pierce, with Max Crosby being the face of the team and adding $110 million man Christian Wilkins in free agency. Expectations kind of grew and grew. So, Mariah Janos, how do you feel about the D and what they kind of displayed on Sunday? Were you expecting even more from this defensive unit?
They were working overtime on Sunday. Yes, the first half, great. But that second half, they ran out of steam, and rightly so. We heard Willie talking about the time of possession by the offense. That doesn't really help your defense out one bit. And if you look at that second half alone, the Chargers racked up 158 yards rushing just in the second half. So that's when it all just unraveled. And the defense got tired. You saw it, missed tackles, bad angles, blown assignments, both in the run game and after the catch. So it was just too much for them to sustain that momentum when it's really all on the defense. Your offense has to help you
100%. And listen, I mean, in that first half, they held them to 6 points, but it's that old adage. I mean, a good offense in turn is a good defense. What did you guys think about even just the duo of Crosby and Wilkins? Were you expecting a little bit more there? Because that 1-2 punch is going to be a big deal for this defensive line.
I mean, what we saw in the first half, as Mariah said, is exactly what I expected. I mean, they were terrorizing, from both edges, and I thought that they did a great job of containing a lot of what the Chargers were offering up. But in the second half, when you begin to get tired, you're going to have breakdowns. You're going to allow the bigger plays, and that can be a problem, especially in the secondary. I think Christian Wilkins definitely showed why he was brought in, and it made Tom Telesco look, like it was a brilliant move to bring him in and pair him with Max Crosby. Of course, now we saw Tyree Wilson earlier this week. He's been on the injury report, so we have to see what his status will be. But I think it comes down to a balance on both sides of the ball. As I mentioned earlier, Mariah just reiterated, you have to get consistency on both sides. You have to have sustained drives so your defense isn't getting tired. And the fact of the matter is, there are going to be games like this weekend against Lamar Jackson, if not the best athlete in the NFL. Well, I think he personally is the best athlete overall, where you're going to have to be conditioned and be able to defend in the secondary efficiently because your guys up front can't do it alone. There are going to be some balls that get downfield, and you got to be ready to defend them. What we saw last week were big plays at the right time in favor of the Chargers.
And there's a lot of respect for Lamar from this Raiders team. Willie, you even sent me a tweet about Devontae Adams calling Lamar Jackson the most talented ball carrier
because we had
in
talked
the
about
league.
it off the air, right?
Yes, so I appreciate that you sent me that. Ray, let me ask you this, because let's just talk from the eye test. When you watch this game, does the physicality of this defense pop off the screen? Because my answer is no. And I think, once again, this team, this identity, this Antonio Pierce team, there should be a physicality that pops off the screen. Did it pop off the screen for you?
So I might just contradict you.
I
think that your expectations, man, are just through the roof, right? Crosby is the best defensive player in the league, and just because he was on the field so long and he got gassed and the defense that he leads got gassed, now all of a sudden we're like, oh, they didn't equal these great expectations.
Yes.
Well, they left some meat on the bone, absolutely, but the reason they did is because the offense is so bad, right? Worst quarterback arguably in the league, running back, running back situation. Well, maybe not worse.
No, this is why we love
top 5 type of thing. Okay, the defense is going to be just fine, and they're going to win some games for the Raiders because they're going to keep you around long enough to where, next thing you know, the other team's offense, especially if you get a bad offensive line, they're going to be like, oh, great, we got to go block Max Crosby again in those long arms and that motor that never stops.
Raise your hand.
You're spoiled,
If you feel like this is a panel of maniacs and then Ray Brewer is like Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung and just the therapist to this motley crew. I mean, you
understand what I'm saying? So your
sentiment is, so real quickly, before we had the break, just your sentiment as our parent on this panel.
He's the sane one?
Yes, I actually believe so. Ray, what is your sentiment to Raiders fans at home who are going crazy like me?
Yeah, just pump the brakes here a little bit. I mean, Antonio Pierce is a master motivator. He's going to get you ready to run through a brick wall. Max Crosby loves the guy. He advocated for him to be the coach. Max is going to go ball out every week. He's going to make life miserable on people. And that's going to put them in position to win the game if the offense could just somehow get the ball to 17. He needs to play. And I just think that we're all overreacting.
Can I say one word?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Namaste.
Yeah.
That's how I feel after hearing everything Ray Brewer just said. Guys, this is why you tune into Sin City Beat. This is not just sports advice. This is life advice here. Next, we're going to look to Baltimore, and I'm already getting stressed again. I got to say namaste, because the Raiders are going to try to contain Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. We got predictions next. After losing the season opener to a division rival, the Silver and Black would love to avoid that 0-2 hole, but the Ravens will be a scary opponent in Week 2, especially coming off that crushing loss to the Chiefs last week. We all remember Isaiah Likely toe tap, that cleat right on that back touchdown line. It's not pretty stuff. So, Willie, I don't want to say this is a must-win. After all, it's only Week 2, but is it more of a must-win? Does it feel like for the Raiders or for the Ravens as they both try to avoid an 0-2 hole?
Well, I'm going to go back to pre-week 1 and overreact just for Ray in that I felt that the Chargers-Raiders game was a must-win in a sense that it was a division game for two teams that are they battling for 3? Are they battling for 2? They're definitely not battling for the AFC West crown. And so it was a statement game for the organization that comes out ahead in that one, and I felt that the Chargers came through with that must-win. So at this point, I think that the Raiders are a little bit more in must-win mode. Yeah. Now, should there be any teams in Week 2 talking about must-win? I don't even know. I mean, we've seen teams after Week 4, they're 0-4, and all of a sudden they're thinking, critics are thinking about the draft already, and then they come back and make the playoffs.
Right.
But with what we're talking about and the urgency in which this organization is in, I think, to a degree, I think they're a little bit more in must-win mode than the Ravens, because I think the Ravens are going to be fine and at some point compete for the AFC North title.
Mariah, are we freaking out if we go 0-2 here for the Raiders? I mean, is this a must-win in Week 2 of the NFL?
Well, look, I don't care who you are, Raiders, not the Raiders. To bounce back in Week 2, the Ravens are not the team that you want to play. So my expectations aren't too high for this one, just looking at the matchup alone. But I think there is a lot to prove with the Raiders because you're making those coaching changes, all of these offseason adjustments. You want to make sure it's for something, and you want to see results. And maybe you're not going to see them right out of the gate. It does take time. We clearly didn't see it in Week 1, but there's flashes of it. The Raiders have something in them to keep them in it this season, and it's just we need to see if all of the adjustments they're making from head coach to OC and the personnel were these the right moves.
Yeah, and we remember, I mean, Raiders beating the Ravens here in Allegiant last year. So, I mean, it's going to be a different story this go-around. Thank God, through the little light at the end of the tunnel, you got Carolina in Week 3 who looked dreadful. Ray, I want to go to you. And before I pose a question to you, I just want to say, your voice, can you read audiobooks of Shel Silverstein and just put us to bed? Because you have such a nice, calming voice. If I had a daughter, you're the type of guy I would want her to really date and marry because you just have such a nice, beautiful, calming presence.
Well, could I get my father-in-law on the phone for you?
Yeah, let's call him up. Actually, hey, we'll do you even one better. Next week, we'll have you and your father-in-law on the panel. How does that sound?
Well, that's great. He doesn't speak English, but it's fine.
What language do I have to? I'm going to go
Spanish. Should be good for Los Raiders. But
okay,
yeah.
We'll do Google Translate the entire show. Guys, I'm Mike Davis. This is what Sin City Beat is all about. That is Willie G. Ramirez, the great Ray Brewer, and Mariah Janos. I'm Mike Davis. Next time, you'll see us here doing all the same good stuff, but we'll just have Ray's father-in-law with us. I think it'll be fun.